Hi, welcome back to dev.log. In today's video, we're going to cover fixes, logging in, sign-in functionality, middleware, and upcoming. So the main fixes that I've been working on were related to UI. So if you now hover over the theme toggle, it will now give you a little pop-up saying, hey, toggle theme here. Again, still the same light mode, added some icons to it as well to just add some flair, but also now I fixed up the drawer on mobile view, so if you have it in landscape mode, you can still use it and scrollable. I added this kind of functionality to other parts, including the login and sign up page. So again, you're still able to log in. I would recommend doing this in landscape, but also in portrait. You know, the sign-in form is pretty large, so being able to scroll is just nice. Same thing with the login. If you want to do it, for some reason you're in landscape mode on mobile, you'll be able to do it. That's just a small fixes there. Related to logging in, no, not that kind of logging. I have now set it up so you can actually be able to log in to an account. So let me just show you here on the video demonstration. And ta-da, we're now logged into the page. This is the settings page. I will switch it later to like be a user's homepage, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm making it set to the settings page. Again, when you log out and you try to go back to that settings page, which is /settings, you won't be able to access it. It will just redirect you, and I'll go over into that functionality later on in this video. So going into that login sign-in functionality, we basically have our login TS file, which is a server action file that we call in our login form when we click login. So diving into it, we first get the values, so that's again what's submitted in the form, and we make sure that's still part of the login schema. And then first off, we validate those fields, parse it, and make sure again it's all good. And then we have it checked here to say, hey, if it's not successful, then throw an error, invalid field, simple stuff. And then down here is where we basically extract the email and password from the values or the data. And then we throw it down into a try catch configuration where we first off in the try, we're going to try to sign in using the email password. And then we'll say redirect to the default login redirect, which is the redirect to the settings page currently. Now with the catch, if the error instance auth error, then we have just a switch case where we say credential sign in, return this error. Default is something went wrong. So basically if the email or password is wrong or something, it'll throw the error saying invalid email or password. If it isn't, then something did go wrong. And then we just state down here at the bottom to throw an error. It makes sure everything works right because an error needs to be thrown in this case. Going into middleware, you may be asking, what the heck is middleware if you're not very familiar with it or the concept of it. In Next.js, this is applied, so it's not related to just specifically Auth.js, but Next.js. They allow for middleware, which basically runs an edge runtime that allows you to do a couple different things. In our use case, we're using it to allow persistence of tokens/sessions. So we are going to be using tokens and sessions on the browser side to say, hey, you're allowed to be here kind of thing, rather than just regular login, as well as not using like database kind of login where the session is stored in the database. It also helps protect pages. Protecting pages is of course important to any software. If you don't want someone to access it, if there's certain pages that are like, oh, this is only has been useful, or other, again, concept, it helps protect those pages and not allow. I demonstrated that earlier with doing /settings, and it redirected me back to the login since I wasn't logged in. Now, also, as I stated before, it runs on the Edge runtime, so think of it as like a basically pared down, like slimmer version of the Node.js runtime, in the sense that it's able to do some things but not able to do everything. So of course this makes issues arise. Those two issues, for me at least, have been the Edge compatibility and Firestore compatibility. They kind of both are connected to the same, again, issue, but both have two different solutions. Now, let's go into the issue with Edge compatibility. Again, this might be long and a lot of jarble. I'm going to try to explain it quickly. So Auth.js basically needs an adapter to access the database of your choosing. My choice has been for this project Firebase. So I use the Firebase admin SDK. This is all information that is on Auth.js if you want to read more. But the middleware runs on the Edge. Firebase admin SDK is built for Node.js. So not all the abilities of the runtime are available to run the Firebase admin on the Edge. So that's the problem where it just doesn't work. So to fix it, basically you need to separate the rest of the auth functionality that is needed for the middleware from all the other stuff for Auth.js to work. So basically what you need to do is instantiate a new instance used for the middleware that doesn't use the adapter. So looking at the code, basically, rather than our typical auth.ts file, we are going to separate the providers into their own file called auth.config, and we can then plug that into the regular auth.ts, as well as we can instantiate a new auth just used for the middleware, nowhere else, just the middleware, showing you here. We take this and we basically plug it into here. Take a bit closer look later on in this video, but that's, again, just basically take this and we're going to put it in here and we're going to call in our own auth function, and then we'll use it later in the file. You take this auth config and you can also plug it back into the regular auth.ts file that I'm using for this project. Now to the next issue at hand is the Firestore compatibility. So it's a similar issue as Edge compatibility because it all relies around Edge runtime and the Firebase admin SDK. In the auth.config, it needs to query and validate the user to authorize it. So you could like log in technically, but if the user isn't authorized, then nothing will really happen. So we need this authorize, of course, to work. It leads back into the Firebase admin SDK that's not compatible with the Edge. The fix to this that I have found is that you need to add the Firebase web SDK, different SDK. Again, you can go onto the Firebase website, look it up, and what I then did is split what I had as a user TS, which was the file that would query different aspects that I would need for the user. I split that file into two files. Basically, they both do the same thing. They both have the same functions and get the same information. It's just in the back end side and the SDK part of it, how it accesses that data is a bit different. Web SDK is more used for the client, as the admin SDK is used for the server. So let's actually look at these files. So first of all, let's look at what is the cause of the issue. The cause of the issue is we want to find our user and we got to get that information. We want to get based off the email, since we're putting in the fields for the email and password. We want to make this query, this function, get user by email, and then we pass in the email. That basically has our query to get the information that we need for the user. Now, if I was using the Firebase admin SDK, it just wouldn't work because this is running on the Edge. So what I had to do is, again, split up the files. So we basically have the use server, and then we have the use client, basically the server and the client side. If you look closely, they're pretty much the same. Slight differences because of how the SDKs are built out and how they write up a little bit differently. But again, they still query both the same data. Primarily, I will be using the server side stuff for most any other thing. As long as I don't need it, it doesn't need to be run on the Edge or on the browser, then I will be using the server. Finally, diving into the main talking point of this whole section, the middleware, we can see, again, going back over, that we have our auth instantiated here, And then we use that function here, which basically is requesting the URLs. So it basically asks for the URLs that are being used. And then we also have it set so that it will check if the user is logged in or not as a Boolean. We set it as a Boolean. We then later on use it down the line. And then we also have all these variables here that basically are for the routing and making sure the pages are secured. We'll look actually into the routes TS file to actually see what it's kind of fully doing. So as you see here, this is route TS. It can be built out more, but basically these are the routes that are okay. So we have the public routes, which is just basically the slash, so it's the landing route. You might be wondering why you have both the same things for public and landing. That's for later on. You'll see it later in the code that I have. There's a chunk of code that I have right now commented out. We'll uncomment it when it's in production, but for me in testing, it just allows me to quickly more develop than having it be running right now. And then again, we have the authorized routes, so slash login or slash sign up. And then we have our API auth prefix. That's just, again, making sure that's all okay and needs to be always allowed. And then we have our default route used for the redirect, and that is right now settings. But again, I can use this and change this later. As you saw earlier in the video, again, I use this variable to call the redirect. So going back again into middleware, this is the section of code that basically is checking and making sure all those routes are good or not. So if it is an API auth route, we just return it, or if it is a auth route, and then if it is a login route, we then redirect to the login page. If not, it just returns, goes perfectly fine, we're good. Again, this is the chunk of code that I was talking about earlier that I blocked out. Basically, it is if you're logged in and you try to go to the landing page, it'll just redirect you to your default page. Because the landing page is mostly, for my concept of it, just getting people interested in it. But if you're logged in, you already know what the app is using and everything like that. But for me to easily more develop and access all the pages that I need to access, then it's just easier right now to block this out. But when I need to put it in, it's already there and I can just uncomment it. And then lastly, we have, if it is not logged in and it is not a public route, then it will redirect you to the login. So the last part here on the page, let me just make sure you're following along. This part here is basically to redirect if you're not logged in. So if you are not logged in, you try to go to slash settings, since that's the only other page right now that is fully protected, it will then redirect you to login, because you need to log in to access these pages. So that's basically what that does. And then we just have a basic return if anything else. The last part of this file is basically a config that is a regular expression that basically allows these certain routes to be allowed. Basically, they don't invoke the middleware, so they don't have the checking or anything like that. These are just basic routes to make sure Next.js works all fine and good. The regular expression I got from Clerk. There is a regular expression that Auth.js gives, but the Clerk one, since it's Clerk, if you know about Clerk, is more, they've been doing it for a while. They know what they're doing with authentication. So again, them giving access to it, it was a no-brainer to throw it in. This leaves us off with upcoming. And basically, if you watched last week's video, this is maybe deja vu. Develop authentication. I still have a decent chunk of stuff to go. Luckily, again, I am able to now log in. That's great, but I got to get all the callbacks set up and working good, making sure, of course, information that's gained from that. Again, probably will go into this more at the next video because I'll have it done. And then we have all the OAuths need to be working. So again, getting Google fully set up, getting GitHub set up, getting Discord set up for OAuth, and then hopefully setting up so that the additional fields that might be missing from the OAuths, like a password or stuff that just isn't given, will, if you're signing in for the first time, we'll redirect you and make sure that, hey, add this information here. So if someone does want to use the traditional credentials login, they will be again, that's just down the line, something to work on. And then profile customization, so basically all the settings things, so being able to change your password, being able to change your display name, and all the other kind of customization things, profile pic, again, bunch of stuff. So that's kind of what the goal is. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and hopefully next week you'll see more. And if you want to see what has happened before then, go check out the playlist. It has all the videos before this, going into all the headaches I've already ran into. Thank you for watching.